Hi everyone, we're going to give everyone a couple minutes or so to join. Hi everyone, thanks for finding the time to join us for our webinar today on security reviews in real life, where we'll be reviewing AI-generated code in production. Few housekeeping items before we get started. All lines have been muted, so please put any questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer all questions towards the end of our webinar. Anything we don't get to in our webinar, we will send up a follow-up email offline to address your question. We'll be sending out all relevant resources mentioned throughout the webinar after the webinar, along with the recording. With that, I will pass it over to our hosts, Jonathan and Ken.
Thanks, Haley. Really excited to be here, and thanks so much for having me. We're going to talk today about dry run and really dive into some code and dive into some findings. And Ken, I'm super excited to be on the call with you. So thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
Hey, man. I've looked up to you my entire career, so really thrilled to be doing
Cool,
this with you.
cool. All right, let's get into it then. So here we go. Okay, cool. I'll give a quick background and hand it to you, Ken. So my name is Jonathan. Everybody calls me Jay Cran. I started a company called Mallory recently. My background's in cybersecurity as a practitioner first, then building, at Rapid7, Canada Security Bug Crowd, a variety of early stage kind of assessment focused security companies. And Mallory is the new thing we've been working on for a couple of years now, actually, and it's really focused on being the CTI capability for organizations, helping folks in detection engineering, helping folks on assessment and exposure, helping folks in traditional kind of CTI capabilities of hunting and digging into the where the threat might be at any given moment for a given organization. So like we're still kind of pre-launch, early at this point. You'll see some announcements here in the next few days. But yeah, really, and we've been a dry run user for pretty much that entire time as we've been building. And so we're an AI first company, and we're of course like very excited and very happy to talk about dry run as a component of that building. Cool,
Yeah, and
Ken.
I'm Ken. I'm the CTO and co-founder here at DryRun. And yeah, I've been watching Mallory's progress. Obviously, like I said, I'm a big fan of Jay Cran, Jonathan Cran, and yeah, excited to talk about sort of, but also just what's modern shipping look like with AI assisted toolkits as well. So this should be a fun one. Plus, we get to talk through some pretty cool bugs. So this should be fun.
Yeah, yeah, love that. That's really where this came from. Was our just like Slack channel where I'm sharing stuff back to Ken and saying, hey, this is really cool. It found this. I can't believe that it found this, and sharing kind of tools and tips and other things that we use internally. And so, yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about just a level set here. What is agentic enabled engineering? Somebody asked me the other day, like, are you guys AI enabled? Are you building an agentic development shop? And I was like, what does that actually even mean? And so, just of course, what do? You throw it in Claude or you throw it in ChatGPT, and you get kind of, it's agents operating at goal-directed outcomes. And so, using it from all the way from sort of feature and ideation all the way through to execution and actual delivery, and of course, review along the way. And like this idea of a uh, closed loop development process and everywhere, right? Like not just building code, not just like Claude itself as like Claude code, but also using Claude as a PM, using Claude as a design partner, and really trying to get the feedback flowing throughout the process. And yet, even just like we're getting, I mentioned close to launch, and so like using Claude to build markdown documentation and scripts to get documents out of the code base and into the docs site, stuff like that. So documentation's definitely in the loop here. And yeah, I mean, listen, are we vibe coding? Yeah, I mean, everybody's vibing at this point, I think. Certainly keep our hands and pulse on the architecture and the details. But without, dry run and a variety of other kind of agents and reviewers in the loop, that's not really possible to build an enterprise security company, because you're moving so quickly. We're talking 10, very small team of a few folks, but really like an abnormally large by 2022 standards amount of code every day. We're talking 10 PRs. It's not a 10 significant PRs is not not an abnormal day. And so volume, velocity, and agentic throughout, I think really describes what I would call agentic engineering. Ken, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'd just add that, I think with the velocity of code being shipped, there's not a whole lot of human eyeballs looking at every single line of code like there used to be. So there needs to be sort of like a way to catch up with that. And I think that's going to be something we covered. I also am happy to do this because I've noticed a lot of, just with this being a newer thing, I've noticed a lot of confusion in the market. Like for instance, I saw a LinkedIn post, I think it was a few days ago, where someone was like talking about, it was a very lengthy post about how skills were going to replace MCP. And I'm like, well, those do different things. One's a data source, combined with LLMs fetching from that data source. The other is actually like doing something with that data and guidance. And so just seeing how confused people are and how quickly engineering practices
Totally.
are shifting, it's like really nice to bring some clarity today to some of that and how it works and how it actually looks. Yeah, real org who's
Com- c- Completely
yeah.
agree. And even, like I was just thinking as you were speaking, like we're going through our SOC 2 now, and there's, code review requirements on that. And, and talking with buddies, and they're like, we can't keep up with the volume of code because there's so many PRs to go through. And if you fall behind, like it's easy to sort of get in a hole to where you have to dig yourself out of a wealth of riches in terms of new capabilities and new features, which is kind of crazy. And to your point, like were there ever enough eyes on this code in the first place, right? Like all bugs are shallow with enough eyes on them. But like we just, I think we've always overestimated the ability of human code review to identify bugs up front. I mean, it is an important thing. It does find bugs, but it was never a perfect solution. So yeah, I mean, like these kinds of tools, dry run, and having the ability to review as a human would review, or even better in many cases. I mean, that's my argument for SOC 2 is like, why do we need human review, right? We need more agents actually reviewing this stuff.
I suspect change management will have to adapt. I've thought about this for a bit. I'm sure there will be standard changes in what is considered a just just to kind of cap this. I'd say like LLMs are looked at as entities the same as humans are. So there will have to begin to be a bit more regulation and guidance geared towards AI entities, I should say, rather than LLM, but AI entities, just like there are humans, and maybe in
I
favor of
I
AI
for one
entities.
welcome it. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's get there. All right, cool. Let's keep moving. So I just wanted to, one more quick level set here, just so you get a sense. And again, part of the goal here is to share kind of what's working for us. So I'll be really brief through this. Yes, this was nano bananaed. It is what it is. I just wanted to be able to demonstrate the process here real quickly. So, typically what's happening is we're talking with folks, in our community channel, or we're talking with design partners. We're ideating, hey, we want this idea of a detection opportunity, or, something. Go ahead and analyze this report and give us all the potential detections. Okay, cool. That's a good idea. Okay, how exactly would that work? Maybe I need to iterate a little bit with Claude or with ChatGPT, and ultimately that goes into linear, and we essentially, have typically a project, and a project is kind of, in my mind, a design doc where you have a problem, a proposed solution, a set of like, here's what we think, here's how we think this might fit into the system. We'll iterate on that until we feel pretty ready for it. And then actually, like, now that you've got a design doc with a proposed solution, you can actually just like toss that at, whether you're in Cursor or whether you're in Claude. And what you want to do is get a spec out of that is like, here's how I would actually implement this. And at this point, there might be a handoff to an engineer. It might be the designer or the product manager that's actually still kind of fleshing it out. But at some point, there's a handoff, right? And then that person who's responsible for driving this thing through the development process is going to essentially implement that spec. that could be as simple as like a couple of seconds. It could take a couple hours of iteration and, working through the process and making sure that the tests run. And ultimately, you're getting to the point where you have a feature. It's ready to essentially push into the database. And that's when we, create a PR. We're typically going to use Claude or some sort of command to create that PR. So we have the full context of the spec and everything. And we're keeping linear up to date during this period of time by using commands in the agent itself. And then ultimately, that's where dry run really comes in. Now, we use a bunch of different code agents, but dry run is our primary security agent. And here's what I'll say about this. Like, I'm for more agents reviewing the PR. Excuse me, not less. You saw the news about Anthropic coming out with a security agent. Great. At this point, I can't get enough feedback on these things. And dry run is the only one that really brings a deep security perspective at this point. And it's so much better than everything else. It's just worth calling out. Like, we don't have a problem with Anthropic. Like, by all means, go find more bugs. There's certainly a need for more and more review. But ultimately, dry run has such a head start on this that nobody else is even coming close with regard to the amount of security findings that are coming out of it. So anyway, enough kind of like raving about what I think you guys are kicking butt. And so, ultimately, we're going to resolve those PR comments. I'll talk real briefly. I just wanted to throw an additional point in here around resolve PR comments. I'll show you in the next slide. But because we have so much feedback on those individual PRs, we just put Claude on getting them out of GitHub and resolving the PRs, proposing fixes. We review the fixes at that level. So we're not in there individually going like, oh, well, dry run said this, or, Code Rabbit said this, or, Sentry said this, or whatever, right? Like, we're actively taking those things as a bundle and, processing them again. And we just kind of keep iterating on that, of course, with oversight and review. But the goal is to get through those PR comments super quickly and address those issues, unless you have a structural issue, right? Like, sometimes we do say, you know what, actually, like, this is fundamentally insecure. We need to change how we do this. And so at that point, you just go back to the getting process. Anyway, then we ship it, auto promote it into, production at some point, and build in controls around that too, Anyway, high level alignment on process. Goal is to ship as quickly as possible, keep velocity. Yeah, I don't know. Ken, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this actually aligns quite a bit with our process as well. And I agree with you with having multiple agents. In fact, we'll talk about that later, but ours is the same. We like more feedback, not less, and recursively going through those reviews from those pots until you get to a point where you feel like it's just nitpicks, gets to a very clean state. And so it's very nice. Yeah, very similar to yours.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this is the most well-tested, most well-architected system I've ever built, and I feel like that probably you feel the same. Like, it's just
Yes.
your velocities increase, but also it's not like it's vibed. It's more like it's just really well reviewed and really well managed through this process. All right, visually, I also nana banana. I apologize, but looks okay. Yeah, linear on the left-hand side. We use Claude, Cursor, Devin. Actually, I'll just put a plug for Devin in here. The reason Devin's great is because it's got the deep wiki thing where it's MCP server that you can reach out to get additional feedback on the code base from the agent. So if you have Claude plugged into your deep wiki MCP, at any given moment, it can ask, sort of like these summarized questions, or rather it can ask questions and get a summarized response of, oh, actually, that's implemented like this, or, hey, this is how we do memory compaction with the agent, or, hey, this is how the ingest actually works at the bronze layer. Like, lots of, which it could get, it has the code base there, but the fact that it's been summarized and also, put into a format that makes it easier and saves less tokens. It's like Cloudflare's code mode for APIs. I don't know if you've seen this one, where like, they're taking an MCP server and applying it to like a 1,000-page API spec, and it brings back the very specific relevant API endpoint that it needs to call. Right? It's just like it's pre-summarized for you as like sort of a search function, very similar to DeepWiki. And
Nice.
like the game now, of course, is memory management, or rather context window management. And so anything you can use to kind of like make your agent better and smarter in the moment is really helpful. It also, last thing I'll say about Devin, it also allows you to run your tests as a VM in the background. I think a lot of stuff is kind of caught up with that, but having this ability to sort of like in linear go, hey Devin, can you handle this for me? And it just works, is pretty amazing. Our stack is Python and Next, probably very similar to most at this particular stage. I showed a couple of the other agents here, but really we have a bunch, and highlighted dry run here is like the primary source of security feedback that we have. All right, I'll shut
Yeah,
up
I would
here.
add that to your point about the um, collecting important information about the application and being able to sort of query and have this stuff sort of pre-filled out. That's actually, I think that's like one of the benefits of using pretty much any AI backed or AI native review system is that you get a lot of like for instance when you run a deep scan, which is the full repo scan with dry run, it creates a bunch of context that you can query through our MCP server, but also it feeds into our PR agent. And what that context is, it goes way deeper, right? It's not just like, oh, you're, I don't know, you're React or you've got a, I don't know, Golang API or whatever it is. It's not that. It's more like what's the business purpose? Who's it serving that for? What kind of data is flowing through? Is it sensitive? What do the authorization decorators look like? What's the composition in terms of structure for like security libraries in use inside the application? What are the important configuration files? Things like that like, you definitely want to have on hand if you're going to be doing analysis and actually, yeah, doing robust analysis. So, and then the
Yeah,
last thing I'll say is I love CodeRabbit. I just want to give them a shout out. Really love that tool. It was us and them in the beginning of doing reviews, and we've been watching them and yeah, really love that product.
awesome. Yeah, love it. And to your point, like human, basically like human level review. Hey, so I think probably we need to speed up a little bit just to keep pace here, and I'll go really quickly through this, and then we'll get straight into findings. And so, just wanted to show this off for a second here. Just kind of like how are we structuring? And I think what we're showing here is, yeah, okay. So Claude is really great at allowing you to customize it and build agents and commands and hooks now. And so the way we've structured is we have this like top level repo that is like our Omni agent across all our code bases. And then each individual code base has its own kind of set of agents or commands or whatever. And when I say independent code base, what I mean is like backend versus front end versus website versus doc site versus, the middleware component. And so over on the I'm just orient you to the very lower left over here. And so I mentioned that command around resolve PR reviews. And I just want to give a little taste here of what that thing does. Notice at the top here, analyze all unresolved PR review comments, check run annotations and security bot comments. Matt Buck on our team, really strong engineer, had put this together, and it's saved so much time that I just wanted to call it out. And so, what it's going to do is reach out to the GitHub API using their GraphQL API, pull down all those security reviews, analyze them, kick off these sub agents that you see at the bottom of that lower left, PR comment, security analyst, code quality analyst, and actually just run through those looking for additional feedback. So that's that recursive iteration cycle that Ken had mentioned, where we're getting this code review and then we're kicking it off to agents to do even more. And I showed off some of the commands and agents that we have. I'm not going to spend too much time on that today. We'll do a follow-up if there's interest, like happy to dive into deeper process stuff. But I think the point of today is to go like, hey, here's some of the stuff we're finding. And so with that in mind, I'll just jump straight to the first level finding here, which in and of itself is not that amazing. And I wanted to start like relatively simple here, because like you can probably do this stuff with classic SAST, where it's looking for a particular pattern, if you will. It's almost just like regex. But like because of velocity, this stuff has gotten even more important. Here's a case where this create PR, yeah, you'll notice on the second screenshot here, it says design prototype. Well, back to process, how do you design fast enough to actually keep up with your devs? Your devs are actually the faster part of your cycle now, which is crazy. But in this case, we had built a design prototype of the application. We were managing it like a real application. I think we're moving away from that now, and where we're actually just prototyping with the primary app and saying like, okay, we're just going to spin up a PR and we're going to implement this feature at least like on the front end. We don't have to have the full back end yet, but that's a way we can kind of keep pace with the application. Anyway, point is, we had a let's say an incident, if you will. It's not actually that bad because it's in the prototype thing. There's no real data in there. But like, I mean, if you're going to commit your personal token into the repo, it's probably not a great idea. And so that's what happened in this particular case. And I would say like, I mean, we've got a designer who's learning code, right? And that's a thing that's happening now. They have to. And I think they built, if I understood this correctly, like a thing that enables them to create the PR with a piece of code rather than just using like Claude or something. And I'm not sure exactly why, but that's they hard coded the thing, and probably Claude did that for them. Probably at their request. And so
Yeah.
anyway, just like finding this stuff quickly is really important. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, it's just no. So I was like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally a thing. Like you have more and more people writing code, you're going to have more and more of these like very basic but very important things to find and fix quickly. I'll keep moving. Here's one I'm personally responsible for, and I kind of knew what I was doing, but sometimes you just need somebody to tell you, no, it's bad. You shouldn't do that. And here's kind of like what was happening, right? We have this concept of an entity resolution system. We need to essentially enable, when we see something like GitHub and GitHub Inc., for example, or dry run and dry run security, we need to know that those are the same entity behind the scenes. And so we have this concept of alias claims, and we can kind of merge those things. And some of that happens automatically, but sometimes I need to actually like manage it through the API. So I built a little admin tool, did the thing. And I was like, you know what? Great. Let's put it in Slack. So it just pings me whenever it needs something. Okay, cool. We'll just put a link in Slack. Well, actually, like we can't really post to the API from Slack. You know what I'm going to do? Spin up a Get endpoint, and we'll just click the thing. Not thinking, oh yeah, actually that creates the ability to CSRF it effectively. And so yeah, that was a kind of dumb thing that I just did. And I was like, oh yeah, actually, like I probably shouldn't do that. Let's keep it in the API. Let's build the actual admin interface. Stop trying to move so quick. Slow down a little bit. Anyway, like a really good finding. Even as a security practitioner, you kind of know these things, but it's useful to have somebody reviewing and going, hey, actually, here's exactly how we exploit this. Here's exactly what we're going to do. And I didn't do the dry run security justice here. Like it's better when it shows up in GitHub and you get the full kind of breakdown. I just went and pulled these out of your app, but like having them in context is like really, really valuable, I would say. Anyway,
Yeah, and I've got some examples later that show like a comment, so it'll kind of
cool.
show that side of it.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Here's another example. This one's like kind of back to the 90s in some ways. Like I was spinning up so we had a new dev started, and I was like, oh, you know what we should do? We should like seed the app for them so that they have some data. Like it's pretty painful to pull all the data in. Like it could take a couple hours to get all the stuff in. No, let's just create some like template entities. And then I was like, oh, actually we need to do this only in the development environment. Can't have it in prod. And Claude helpfully decided, you'll see here in this change in the red here underneath verify environment, said, oh, if you don't have an environment set, it's fine. We're just going to pass it through. So like a classic fail open type scenario. And of course, dry run catches it right away. And so I just grabbed the screenshot of the change here and the finding there on the left-hand side. And so, real obvious in retrospect, why would it do that? That's crazy, right? But, it doesn't have enough context. It doesn't know. And would this actually be exploitable in prod? I don't think so. We do set it as production in prod, but like if the environment doesn't get set for some reason, now anybody could seed prod, which actually, like, by the way, creates a first user, sets them as admin, and sends you the key, so probably don't want to do that.
GitHub, we actually were signing sessions like for I don't know, some brief period of time one day because of we didn't correctly merge in environment variables, and so yeah, the defaulted to an empty key string or an empty string for the key for the salt for the key. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Just not a great idea. Let's not do that. Here's one from this morning, actually. Like, I just thought I'd throw a recent one in. And, of course, we're building an agent and we've got, concerns around prompt injection. This turns out to be valid. It's difficult to exploit, but it is valid. And just to give you a kind of like a lay of the land here, we've got this agent. This agent has the ability to run recurring tasks. And we thought, it'd be great if we could allow the user to say like, hey, daily at 6 a.m. or every hour, have that run through an LLM. and essentially create the cron expression out of that. And so that's a separate field now. It runs through a separate model. And listen, we've got controls in place like structured outputs. We check to make sure that it's cron adjacent or valid, at least cron's true. So it technically is exploitable. I did a little bit of, you got the Pliny prompts, if you ever seen these Pliny the Elder prompts, and you can go in and see like what's working today for bypasses on each of the models. And so I took a couple of those and tested it through, and like I think it worked, but because there's no output out of this, I can't actually verify it 100%. But it's an example of a common type of bug these days, and dry run just like catching it right away. So
Yeah,
pretty
I try to
exciting. Yeah, go ahead.
I try to explain to people that agentic applications have an entirely different set of considerations security wise than traditional applications. And so that landscape is evolving. And if you don't have some tools that can reason about things, they're going to miss those types of flaws completely.
I love
Or
that, by the
store.
way. This is the screenshot here is me plugging this into Claude and asking it. And Claude's got some really strong controls on it, but in this particular case, it's like here's an exploit payload. So I don't know, maybe it's being more helpful these days.
That's awesome.
Cool. I think yeah, Ken, to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I mean, I'll keep this slide real short. I'll just kind of explain that, the way SAST or SAST used to work was through essentially pre-guessing as many different types of problems and the structure of how those problems would look, and then tying those to call graph, which is basically a map that says, can user input get to that thing? That's kind of just been the way it's worked for a few decades. In the new world, it's very different. We're asking questions about the code. We're asking, why are you doing this? Who's doing this? What's the motivation behind it? How does this materially impact the code base? What risks fall out of that? And then we ask a bunch of other questions, once we've identified risks that we need to go and then investigate. So there's a lot more just understanding about the code that's changing or the code that's at rest. And so that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how that works under the hood. If you want to go to the next
You
slide.
got it. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just going to get right into some vulnerabilities. So this one was a really important, really interesting one. So we have the ability for you to bring your own key. This means that your operations, your LLM backed operations will always go through your LLM. That's for privacy reasons, right? Well, this change was a change that did not respect those tenant settings, and we flagged on that. This could have been a very disastrous situation. This could have been very, very bad. So yes, logic mismatch. It first had to interpret what are the pre-existing patterns in this application, and then it noticed a drift from that existing pattern, called out, did an investigation, and discovered this problem and surfaced it. So we didn't actually leak any cross-tenant data. So that's
I'm
this vulnerability.
love that. And I'm putting a lot of value today in that ability to pattern match across the code base. And like you can run review passes to say like, hey, make sure this fits with the existing code base. But Claude and others are getting really good at saying like, this is how you implemented it over here. We're going to implement it like this. So yeah, very, very
Absolutely.
valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Detecting that drift from established patterns is crucial. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's it for that one. This one's a privilege escalation, but it's also a logic flaw for that privilege escalation. That's what makes it really interesting. So again, talking about drifting from previously established, I just can't talk, previously established patterns. So all of the functions in this, basically all of the things that take user input and process it in some way, they all, except for two places, respected the fact that not only did you have to be an administrator, but you had to be an administrator of the key and the account tied to the key that you are either creating, deleting, viewing, etc., right? CRUD operations. So two were not respecting it, and one was actually really bad, which meant you could just basically be a member of an organization and not an admin of an organization, and you'd be able to delete the key of that organization, existing API keys for that organization. Obviously, pretty terrible. Obviously, a huge security flaw. And what was most interesting is again, it took a look at what are the changes you are entering into the code base. How does that affect the code base? What are the established patterns? you're introducing a new authorization function. It doesn't follow the intention of those existing authorization functions. So, okay, here I need to tell you that you've deviated, and that here's how and how to fix it. But also, I wanted to point out this was actually me who wrote this flaw, but not really me. It was completely written by Claude Code Opus 4.5. I was in the middle of pushing the PR and still working on it. And I saw that finding and I was just floored. I was so happy it called it out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, authorization stuff, obviously like a perennial issue in building APIs and things like this. And so this, just knowing that this has our back has been really, really helpful as we go from like, we've gone from like global everything, we have a ton of global, threat data to like tenant specific data, and then being able to kind of like bring that tenant capability in piece by piece. And it's totally kept up. It's totally had our back. It's caught a couple of these on our side as well. So yeah, really cool to see this.
During
And
a
by the way,
sprint,
this
I mean, it could be a dozen or 2 dozen PRs in a day during a really intense sprint. And
yes,
to the point that we discussed earlier, it could be 50 files, it could be 100 files. There's no way as a human being I'm going to have the ability to pinpoint something like this that quickly, instantaneously, and yeah, keep up with the speed of
machine
AI
speed.
assisted coding. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying machine speed everywhere. Like you just have to have this stuff at this point. And I do like that we've shown the screenshot of this in GitHub too. Like it is really nice. You get a very quick overview of what's going on. You get, a detailed description, you get the specific code, and then you can jump into the dashboard as you need it. So like it's all the information you need in one particular place to fix it quickly, you or an agent.
Sweet. I'm going to speed run through this, so we'll just do this real quick. So we also have an internal plugin marketplace similar to JCran, does a lot of the same things. If you go to the next slide, um,
Do you want to just before
and
we go to the next slide, do you want to say what a marketplace is? I feel like it's just not as well known that this
oh, good point.
capability exists and plugins exist.
That's a good point. So if you would like to have specific skills and specific ways of sort of guiding your AI assisted coding, you can create your own marketplace. That could be a GitHub private repository or public repository. But the point is that you essentially have the ability to add that marketplace, which then whatever skills are accessible in that marketplace, you can choose to add and utilize locally. So again, the marketplace is where you point to download. That's usually a repository, and then you actually install the skills available in that repository.
And I'm starting to see this stuff proliferate, right? Like there's marketplaces for SaaS type things. For we publish our own marketplace for like CTI type things. Like there's lots of interesting innovation in the space. Watch this space if you're not already, and definitely like this is a good way to share skills amongst groups. And so I'm actually going to take the action item here to go check this out and actually bring this stuff into ours as well.
Yeah,
Cool.
and actually, one thing I'll mention too is we don't have to go to the last one, but the last, and it says it here too. It mentions Insights MCP. So to the point, or we do the same thing. We use GitHub's MCP to connect, to read comments, and to act on those comments. But we also use our own Insights MCP server. And why I want to just highlight that is that most MCP servers from SaaS companies are focused on just showing you like findings. We do that too, but
Yeah.
that's not our only thing. We also surface every single day new things that have shipped that just have risks inherently because of the nature of them. They might be somebody touched authorization, maybe somebody added an API endpoint, things of that nature. So it helps you go in and do an investigation and then automates the code review. And
Cool,
yeah, just
cool. I
invest.
saw it. I saw it in the app. There was I didn't actually know you had this. You guys also just pushed deep scan. Is this related to deep scan or is this like something separate?
Yeah, so for instance, with deep scan, that context I mentioned that you gathered, which is like the most sophisticated asset inventory information I could imagine. Yeah, it's all queryable via that. So
Okay,
deep scan runs, collects that context, and then it's accessible via insights.
got it. Okay, cool. Awesome. I'm definitely going to check that out.
There's a lot of things available via there. But yeah, so I would just say that like basically there are some security related skills just to keep things on track with Codex. Like we run Claude, we run Codex, and we run a few other kind of tools. It changes, that's why I'm not really mentioning them. But Codex and Claude are kind of our ones to read, ones to code review. And yeah, we use them for not just security, but functional investigation, for design and implementation, for all the things that you use it for as well. Everything from securing our code to reading comments and recursively fixing them to doing code reviews. automatically. And I've got some screenshots that kind of show this if you keep going.
Yep.
So yeah, this is just some code review steps with Codex, nothing fancy here, just sort of like, here's what you should do, and here's how you should rate the things that you're finding. And then if you go to the next slide,
Before you go, I just want
uh,
to make sure I get it. So this is a markdown file. You've got this as configuration for Codex, and then you're kicking Codex off manually. Is that correct from the command line?
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of, yeah, it's running multiple, we call it bots versus bots, but yeah, it's multiple opinions on we also believe that the thing writing the code shouldn't be also the thing reviewing the code. I mean, that's our general premise
Agreed.
as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll do that too when I get stuck. Of course, you rotate over to Gemini or you rotate over to GPT or whatever or Codex. Yeah, interesting. Okay, cool. So this is essentially a review bot designed to review your code, and yeah, I mean, we should have something like this. I want to copy this skill.
Like you said, I mean, it's good to have dry runs tech. It's good to have Codex, Claude, everybody. Just get as much in there as you can possibly afford.
Yeah,
This is just basically showing that it can read comments off of GitHub and yeah, enact fixes for the things that dry run calls out. And it's just sort of like you commit, it opens a PR, you do some more commits, and each time there's a review, and then we recursively basically read until that we get to the point where there's no security bugs.
yeah, it makes sense. It makes me think like if you're doing this and we're doing this, like it feels like there should just be like a GitHub action that's kind of like kicked off automatically to kind of keep that loop too, right? And only bubble up whenever there's something that's like, hey, I can't go any further. I need human input. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll collab on that.
Yeah, and this is sort of the reason we didn't lean too heavily into like the remediation craze when that was kind of a thing a few years ago where everyone was kind of like, well, we're gonna, focus only on fixes. It's like, well, if it can write code and it can read your opinion on the security of that code and what's wrong and what needs to be fixed, then presumably it should be able to also resolve that. So us being the person that focuses purely on resolution as a tool set maybe doesn't make sense. But if you go to the next slide, what does make sense is so like this is our external remediation guidance. So we built a skill that our customers can use where they can, yeah, do exactly what I just said. They have it's guidance and it's how to get to remediation properly. And on the right, once Tesla they have a bug, once they publish the update, it'll be at 99 to 100% effectiveness for remediation. So it does a bunch of context gathering and has all these instructions on things it needs to look at and examples and yeah, all this stuff. But basically, it just helps you get to resolution based off of whatever we said. So it's basically something you can put into any AI assistant, not just one. And it's very flexible in that way. These
Nice.
skills are that's a concept, and I know you know this, but for the audience, obviously you know this, but for the audience, skills really are there's superpowers and skills, and these are really just something that's universal that can really be used to help just guide your AI assistant.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're investing in it for sure. Both internally. Yeah, that's like the kind of funny thing is like, I'll tell you, like, internally meaning like for the development organization, but now I've got a legal ops, finance ops, sales and go-to-market ops agents with skills, that can do particular things for me. And I just like, alias them to a name. So like Larry for legal, like if I need advice on something legally, cool. I just hit Larry and it pops open Claude with all the skills and like, yeah, anyway, it's super cool. It's so, hey, what's Tesla? Sorry, I should know, I guess. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, sorry. Tesla is Guy Podjarny from formerly Sneak, head of Sneak.
Cool.
He
Yeah.
started this company to empower the agentic development ecosystem, not even a security thing. So they created a registry, which is basically like, yeah, kind of like NPM for skills.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw there was a gentleman who just spun up skills.sh too. I saw that yesterday. I haven't had a chance to really super dive into it, but sounds similar. Basically like a skills marketplace. I'm gonna jump into this stuff after the call and get a handle on it.
That's
Love it.
super interesting. Yeah, there's lots of skills on there. And yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, like I said, the on the right's our dashboard for our customers. It helps you connect to our MCP server, but you can also download the skill and install it. It gives you instructions, and then or it's just available if you want to just take a look at it on the external plugin marketplace. And maybe if you wanted to, maybe you're not a dry run customer, you just want to like reuse it for your own remediation of whatever else you're using. I would encourage you to take a look at it. It's got some pretty good guidance. So yeah, that's everything.
Love it. Cool.
Do you
Okay,
know we had
cool.
some questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to say, I think you'll have to grab questions, and we can definitely. I think we have time. Haley, jump in if we run out of time. Cool.
So the first one was, what's the fastest way to add meaningful security coverage when AI agents are pushing PRs all day? Yeah, I don't know if you want to take that one first or.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit it. It's like get as much feedback as you can from as many places as you can, but you do need someone, dry run, right? Like that's very focused on the security perspective. And Ken, actually a question, like a follow-on question, if you will. Like I see often that stuff gets surfaced through the general security analyzer, and then you've got a bunch of other security analyzers that are very focused on like SQL injection, SSRF, CSRF, et cetera. Like how is that a legacy thing in the sense like everything was in the general and then now you split out specific analyzers? Just trying to think about like what is it that makes a code reviewer so security focused? Like, is it you've got these specialized analyzers? Is it you mentioned during the call like this ability to sort of like have this business logic of the application that's available to you? I don't know. Like, what's your perspective on what is it that makes something a security review agent as opposed to a regular review agent?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that actually. And so it is legacy, but it's actually the inverse. We started with high signal analyzers, which are the main categories of,
Yeah.
the basically the old OWASP top 10. And we started with that because we were infusing it in a very specific way. And I would call it almost static age. We called it static agents, basically, where it doesn't get to make autonomous decisions. In fact, it's required to ask very specific pointed questions and backfill with a knowledge base. But guess what? That's like not, that's kind of the old world. So we're actually collapsing all of that on itself. So yeah, I haven't even mentioned this, but that all is going away. It's going to become sort of a single analyzer, which splits everything out into the various vulnerability categories, but ultimately will just give you kind of unified risk of like a unified picture of risk on that pull request based off of what's going on inside of it. So
It's so
yeah.
interesting that that's the more effective approach. It makes me think we have kind of a similar architecture in the sense that like we've got an analyzer for exploits and we've got an analyzer for pull requests and reviews for looking for kind of CVE type stuff in these public repositories. And I'm wondering, like, wait a second, should we just have like a general analyzer that's smart about, the specific area, pulls in the context about, I don't know, we got to talk about architecture at some point.
It's not easy,
Yeah.
and it does require you to have like a classifier, small model that you train or tune rather. I shouldn't say train, I should say tune with
Yeah.
classifications of categories. But yeah, it's definitely we found that to be, and then of course with all the agentic tools and sub agent tools, there's a lot we can do to pull it all together.
Yeah. Cool. Hopefully that answered the question. Sorry, we went off a little bit of tangent there. Are there other questions?
Yeah, so during review, how do you quickly tell the difference between noise and something that could turn into a real auth or tenant boundary issue? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the analyzers are really good at this point of kind of calling out high signal stuff, and then we put it through another Claude pass, and usually Claude's going to say like, oh, actually, like, like did a little bit more contextual analysis of this, and like we don't think it's a thing, or actually, yeah, this is valid. So usually, it's a combination of human, but really like additional analysis on top of that with an exploit scenario in mind or an attack scenario in mind is usually how we deal with it. I don't know, Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I think like so the recursive what I talked about earlier about and the same thing you just basically said, using it, I mean, I can discern if I understand the code base pretty well, which I understand at our size, all the code bases pretty well. So I can discern, what like just from institutional knowledge, but I just want to tap into that, which is that, these products should be using your institutional knowledge. Most companies have like an Claude.md, or for us, we read from agents.md, right? So if there's a security specific section that talks about, hey, you should know that you might think this is going to be an authorization issue or a cross-tenant issue, but hey, actually the service is
Mitigate
defined
that.
security-wise
Yeah.
in a different
Yep.
repo. It's over
Yep.
here. And then it's on us to use one of our subtools to go look at that repo and see if, between the two, everything matches up. And by the way, that's not something primitive SaaS, as I like to call it, or legacy SaaS works. It just could never work that way. It's not smart enough. But in the new
Yep.
world, yeah, it's totally possible. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a couple of ways, I guess.
One last piece of feedback on that is like we have this. Yeah, I mentioned at the very top of the call here, like that rules repo that has all the different commands and agents in it. ultimately that's like our cross repo context. And if you pop into that folder, Claude is set to load all the repos, and you can kind of ask questions broadly across the set of code bases. Or if you believe that it's isolated, you can kind of pop to just that code base and you've got all the context there as well. And that additional directories capability of Claude, I feel like underrated because you can kind of compose agents on the fly using that thing. Pull stuff from this repo, pull stuff from this repo, and pull stuff from this repo. And now you've got a combined agent with all those skills.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, yes, just agreed with all of that. This last question, I mean, I think I can just answer it pretty briefly at least on my side, which is like if you could enforce a guardrail, one guardrail in every PR, what would it be and why? And mine is just like whether it's an AI bot or assistant or whatever you want to call it, or if it's a human entity, yeah, you just need to have one other, at least one other set of eyes, and preferably some automation in place. But yeah, that's attestation, change management.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think well said.
Cool. Well, it looks like
Perfect.
we are just out of time, but any questions we did not get to, we will follow up with offline, and answer your questions, and happy to jump on a call as well to continue to answer those questions. Um, we will be sending out all relevant resources, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, after the webinar, so you will be getting the recording and any resources mentioned. Thanks, Jonathan and Ken, for going through the webinar and all of the different findings with us.
Yeah, love it. Thanks again for everything you guys do. Like it's a huge part of our building. So thank you.
Thank you, and I'm excited. I'm excited for your launch.
All right. Thanks everybody.
Thanks. Bye.